and feelings of inadequacy on client outcomes. We're going to learn how to identify these in our clients and learn best practices to help our clients separate identity from shame and learn to lean into their strengths. A recent survey found that 70% of adults have experienced financial trauma in the past or are currently experiencing financial trauma. And 1 in 3 have a significant fear of debt. What this means is that the vast majority of the clients we work with have experience with trauma, and that's going to impact how they're able to show up for their finances. These causes of financial trauma can be varied. It could be early money crises like bankruptcy or homelessness, hearing their parents fight about money. It could be that no one ever taught them about money, so they don't know what they're doing or who to trust. It could be that they've made poor choices in their debt, investing, or money management, but it could be unemployment. A young man I talked to recently said he'd graduated from college and applied to over 300 jobs and just wasn't getting callbacks. He said, it just starts to get to you, like maybe no one wants me. So this situation, employers are posting ghost jobs, and this young man was internalizing this idea that he himself was not worthy of hiring. As we discuss this, we need to differentiate between guilt and shame. Guilt is about how we feel about a thing we've done, and shame is about how we feel about ourselves. It's about identity. Guilt says, I did a bad thing or I did a dumb thing. But shame says, I am a bad person or I'm a dumb person. As you can imagine, this is going to have a really profound impact in what our clients are able to do in their finances and in their overall well-being. I want to touch briefly on the information threat theory of shame. This says that since we live in a society, it matters to us what people in our community think of us. If they don't like us, they might not show up for us when we need them. For that reason, we're going to retreat whenever we feel like we've done something to be ashamed of. We're going to try to hide things they might not like about us. And this can be really beneficial as it helps us learn boundaries and just generally for survival, but it can turn really bad and harmful when we internalize that shame and it erodes our self-being. We know that there's a lot of financial impact from shame and insecurity. Avoidance is a major problem if someone's dealing with shame. They might not check their credit card balances, but they might not be able to open their mail, answer the phone, or even work on their finances. It might mean that they overspend or underspend even when they can afford it. For example, they might have money for routine car maintenance, but be terrified that they would need that money for something else, so they can't get it done. And now they've got to replace a transmission. But beyond just the financial aspects, it can affect every portion of our clients' lives. On a mental health basis, it can cause just sheer emotional exhaustion as they're having to work through all of these ruminating thoughts about how they're not living up to what they feel they're supposed to do. It can cause anxiety or even panic attacks every time they try to work with their money. And in the worst cases, it can cause depression or even suicidal ideation or action when someone believes that there is no way out of the financial troubles. On their physical health, it can cause reduced immune function, heart disease, addiction, and just generally increased mortality. And it even impacts our relationships. Relationships thrive when there's trust, and by its very essence, shame causes us to keep secrets. So if we are hiding things from our partner, we aren't going to be able to have healthy, open relationships. We're not going to be able to have that support system. And then also, if somebody is avoidant because of their shame, they might not be able to develop those healthy financial skills that they could then pass on to their children. So their children don't get to learn that, and that can perpetuate generational trauma. And then also, studies have found that if children experience financial crises while they're growing up, when they become young adults, they have significantly more mental health and financial instability. And all of this just causes a self-perpetuating cycle of financial hardships. That shame causes us to withdraw on ourselves and not reach out to our communities, not look for help. And then maybe we make bad money decisions because we don't have the right answers. Those bad money decisions create additional hardships. And then that hardship tells us that maybe we should be ashamed of ourselves. As we dig into identifying shame and insecurity in our clients, we want to make sure that we stay in our lane. If we're not mental health practitioners, we're not diagnosing anybody. What we're doing is we're looking for areas that our clients are struggling, and then we're looking for ways that we can support them as we can as financial counselors. Certain groups are more likely to experience financial shame and trauma than others. So that is women, people of color, young folks, those who are unmarried, low income, renters, or the unemployed. Early money memories can be a very poignant insight into somebody's financial shame and insecurity that they've learned growing up. So this might be hearing their parents fighting all the time about money. This might have been living in a car and not knowing where their next meal was coming from. Money scripts can definitely give us an insight into their financial identity and if there's shame going on. So feelings of scarcity mindset, imposter syndrome, feeling like they'd be greedy or immoral if they try to earn more money or build wealth. And it might mean that they think they have to earn enough money to be deserving of love. We want to pay attention to how our clients talk about themselves when they're with us. If they're constantly saying things like, oh, I always do this, everybody else has this figured out, that can indicate that they've got a lot of shame in the background. And if they're speaking like this in front of us, it's probably going on much more when they're on their own. There can be physical expressions that we can look out for. Things like if they just get really tense or anxious every time money comes up, or if just their reactions to things are much bigger than the facts of the situation seem to warrant. Finally, certain financial behaviors are related to shame and feelings of insecurity. This can be avoidance, like we mentioned, over and underspending. Hoarding can be due to that financial trauma. Can also look like constantly comparing ourselves to others to see if we're meeting the benchmarks that we feel we're supposed to. Can also look like excessive risk taking. If someone doesn't see any way that they could possibly be financially successful, maybe they're going to be more likely to buy lottery tickets, gamble, or invest in this stock tip that they read on the internet is supposed to make them a ton of money. It can also look like not following through on their homework because they're paralyzed. As we get ready to support our clients through their financial shame, we want to make sure that we set a solid foundation before the session. So we need to do the work. We need to be able to learn how to regulate our own nervous systems so that when we're with our client, their distress is not stressing us out. So that might be learning a meditation practice, grounding exercises. It could also involve going to therapy. Like I mentioned earlier, 70% of people have experienced financial trauma. So in addition to our clients experiencing this, many of us in this group today have experienced financial trauma. I know I have. So we might have some baggage that we're carrying around, and it's possible that something our client says could trigger our own trauma. So we want to really learn how to regulate ourselves when we're triggered so that we can handle whatever comes up in session and make sure that we're there for our clients. This can also give us really good tips on how to support our clients. So we want to come to the session prepared. So we want to be calm and regulated before the session begins. There are a couple ideas that I like. I have a playlist that I listen to that just gets me in a good mood. And I also do a loving kindness meditation. And I do this for my client before they show up each time so that when they get there, I'm just in a really good headspace. I'm on their side and I'm ready to support them. When I was the leader for training in my department, my guiding principle was the assumption of positive intent. So, what I mean by this is that I assume that people want to do a good job. I know not everybody wants to, but most people do. So, before I make assumptions about their moral character, I look for whether they've got the supports they need. The first thing I do is I think about the information. Do they have the information they need to do a good job? I explain why this is important, what doing it properly would look like. If that doesn't work, then I look at training. Do they understand how to do the thing that I'm asking of them? Maybe they need me to go over it with them a couple times, body double with them. Maybe they need me to break this bigger task up into smaller tasks. And then finally, then I need to look at if they need some kind of accommodations or supports. Maybe there's a learning difference. Maybe there's a language barrier, and I need to look for some resources that I can provide them that can make it a little bit clearer for them. What I found in my training at the factory is that, generally speaking, if I work through those three stages, that usually takes care of the situation. We want to always use shame-free language. Often our clients have never shared these secrets with anybody. And so we want to make sure that we are not creating a negative situation when they do share it with us. We want to avoid saying things like, I already told you this, or calling somebody lazy, because that's reinforcing that they should be ashamed of themselves. We want to create a supportive situation, be empathetic, and use language that shows that we understand that they're human. Trauma-informed care is a framework on how to show up for clients who have a trauma background in a way that doesn't perpetuate that harm. But this is good stuff for anybody. So I encourage you to research trauma-informed care and integrate these principles into your practice. All clients are going to benefit from safety, trustworthiness, peer support, collaboration, empowerment, and understanding the cultural, historical, and gender issues that they might be experiencing. Finally, we need to know when to refer. If we're not mental health practitioners, we can't be taking care of certain things. So we need to make sure that they get the help that they need. If they are distressed and they are unable to regulate themselves, if there's any kind of suicidal ideation, they need a mental health practitioner to support them through that. And we can have them do that therapy and then come back for financial counseling or do it in tandem, whichever situation works. We're going to cover the basics of trauma so that we understand what's going on neurologically for our clients who have a trauma background. So first of all, trauma isn't about the thing that happened. It's about how it affected the person. So you can have two different people who experience a similar situation. One comes away with trauma and the other one doesn't. And that just comes down to the nuance of the situation. What was their skill set like? What was their support system like? What was their stress level before the bad thing happened? If a person isn't going to develop trauma, their brain packs that away as a bad thing that happened in the past. But if they develop trauma, their neurology keeps that as a thing in the present. So when someone is triggered, that means that something happens that reminds their nervous system about the time that happened. And then their neurology causes them to re-experience all of those feelings that they had when that bad thing happened. This can be things like causing them to have a panic attack, cry, get angry. It can also cause physical impacts. A totally random situation that I experienced as I worked through trauma therapy myself was that we were working through an experience, a memory that happened when I was a small child in a car. And as we're sitting there on the couch, I got motion sickness. So that lets you know the profound impact and the distress that might be going on for our clients when this happens. We also want to consider the impact of mirror neurons. So mirror neurons are this really neat brain hack that when we see people in our community feeling a certain way or doing a certain thing, our brain lights up and we experience the same feelings. This can be a really great community builder, but it can also cause us to have vicarious trauma. So if our clients are showing up distressed, our empathetic brain is going to be making us feel that way as well. And that's why it's so important to know how to regulate ourselves because we don't know when our clients are going to experience something, bring up something that triggers us. So if we can regulate our nervous system, we're mirroring that calm back to them and helping them to be okay. Affirmations and reframing are really powerful tools uh, to help us deal with the effects of shame. The role of identity is very powerful in shame, and that impacts what our clients think is possible for them. So, what do debtors do? Debtors have debt, save or save. So, we want to make sure that we are pushing them in the direction of positive identity. Affirmations are the antidote to shame. So, we want to be encouraging these as much as possible. For example, we might ask a client about how they've handled a situation in the past so that then they can self-affirm and share examples of how they've done things right. We can also look for opportunities to draw attention to the things that they're doing right. For example, I had a client who was very insecure about money. Uh, and before our first session, uh, she said that she had canceled a subscription. And I just took a moment to say, like, how cool this is that you looked at your finances, you identified something you could cut, and then you followed through. Like, that's pretty incredible. And you could see something click. When she came back in for the next session, she'd canceled several subscriptions. So that shows how those affirmations can get leveraged into further action. Next, I've got some different statements that we may have heard our clients say. And I'm going to share an example of how we could reframe this. If you have ideas on how we could reframe this, feel free to drop those in the chat. So if a client says, everyone else has this figured out, we could reframe that as, I see what other people choose to show. We know the impacts of social media. I've made so many bad decisions. That could turn into, my past doesn't determine my future. If a client says, only an idiot would make this mistake, we can say, I'm human and I'm allowed to make mistakes. If a client says, I'm dumb about money, that could be reframed as, I'm committed to learning. Client says, I'm always making the wrong decision. We could say, I'm learning to make smart decisions. Scaling questions are another great way to help with that affirmation and reframing. So whatever situation we're working through with the client, we can just say, all right, in this situation on a scale of 0 to 10, where are you? And whatever answer they give us, we're going to say, why not lower? What that does is it gets the client in the mindset of looking for ways that they have already been successful. So they might say, well, I've got a lot of debt, but I've stopped spending so much, so I'm not putting anything new on the cards, and I'm making my minimum payments every month. So in that case, we can say, all right, you're a person who can adapt. You're someone who can rein in their spending. You're someone who's consistent in paying your bills on time, which helps your credit score. All of that's positive stuff. And we want to keep those things in mind so later on when they say that they don't do anything right, we can remind them that they do things right. Then, while we've got them in that good headspace, we want to ask, I wonder what it would look like to move to the next level. And so then we've got them in this good headspace, and then they're able to start generating their own solutions to the problem. And then we can adapt this as needed. Some folks really struggle with assigning a numeric value to a subjective feeling. So in that case, we might do a terrible, bad, fair, good, and great scale. So some ideas that I've used in the past with my clients or to have an onboarding questionnaire and include questions that allow them the chance to look for the successes. For example, I ask clients to share a recent money step they've made that they're really proud of. And we can also be vulnerable with our clients. Often, this is the first time they've ever shared these experiences. So they're going to be feeling a little bit nervous. So if we can go ahead and share something traumatic, embarrassing, maybe that we've experienced, that can do two things. One, it can show them that they're not the only person who makes dumb mistakes. And two, it sets us up as a safe person, and this is a safe space for them to share those feelings. We want to avoid jargon when possible because that's just really going to other someone and let them know that they're maybe not smart enough to do this money thing. If we do use jargon, we want to let them in on the secret, explain in their kind of language what that means. And that could be useful because then it could give them the kinds of words that could help them feel like they're in the in group. If you have in-person sessions, maybe have a basket set up with fidgets. And then if they're feeling dysregulated, they could grab one. And also, you can use those mirror neurons. If you see them getting dysregulated, grab one and start fidgeting with it, and maybe they'll pick up one as well. Set clients up for success by setting reasonable, achievable goals rather than one that might be perfect on paper but not practical in real life. Leverage those small victories into larger victories. And finally, give them a chance to enjoy their success. Often, folks who have a lot of shame in their background don't get enough times feeling like they did something well. So when they are successful in a goal, sit down and enjoy that before setting the next goal. So I'd love if we could crowdsource some solutions. What ideas do you have to support your clients, or what things have you used? Also, let's see.
If nobody has, while we wait for people to have
Mhm.
ideas, I would like for you to talk about body doubling.
Yes. So body doubling is a really useful thing where, especially for neurodivergent folks, where sometimes it can be hard to do the thing on your own. And so in that case, sometimes, for example, if you're having trouble cleaning your house, that you might have someone come over and just hang out with you while you clean, or maybe they clean with you. In our scenarios, maybe it could be something like uh, we could uh, we could work on making our own, but writing out our own budget while they're doing it, or we could help them as they work through uh, their budgeting app and learn how to use that program. Seeing some ideas here, reinforcing that people aren't alone and there's help available. Absolutely. Acknowledging success and deleting subscriptions. Exactly. A lot of times people are really hard on themselves. So if they feel like they're always doing the wrong thing, they're also not going to recognize when they're doing the right thing. So we want to bring attention to that. Exactly.
Yeah, I really like to be a cheerleader.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's
Celebrate
perfect.
every little success,
Right.
not by
Exactly.
spending money, but let's have a party, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Share an experience I've had that they might be able to relate to. Exactly. Because what does shame tell us? Shame tells us that we are terrible at this. Everybody's doing better than us. Seeing that this financial counselor has also done dumb things with money, that can be really powerful stuff. Reassure them that they're not alone. We've all made decisions with finances that we wish we would have done better. They're seeking guidance. Exactly. I had a client who, on onboarding, said that he'd done nothing he was proud of. And I was like, dude, you're 25 years old and you're sitting here with a financial counselor. You realize how incredible that is? So, finally, I want to leave you with a quote that I absolutely love by Tiffany Aliche. It says, if you can't figure out how to fix it, then the only way to break shame is to give voice to it. Give voice to the very thing that you're afraid of.
Very good. All right. So, anybody have any questions while we get up your coo?
I we'll go ahead and ask this. Oh, sorry, I shut my camera. So have you had clients who have ghosted you out of what you are convinced is shame? And how many times do you follow up before it's just considered a lost cause?
Yeah, I have had that happen. It's awkward. So what I found is I'll usually follow up maybe, if they miss a session, I might text them that day and then maybe the next day. Then I would usually wait like a week. And then I might wait a month after the next time. I had one client that was dealing with a lot of medical debt and was experiencing a lot of shame with that. And she had a series of traumatic events. And so basically, every 2 or 3 months, I just shot her a text and was like, hey, thinking about you, hope everything's going well. And so 9 months later, she got back to me, and it turned out she'd had all of these terrible experiences happen, and we're meeting again. So I wouldn't say like spend a lot of, uh, don't devote a ton of time to it, but even every couple of months, dropping a line and just suss out the situation. Um, you don't have to go on forever doing unpaid labor, but
Yeah, no, that's helpful because I'm always trying to teeter this line of, is my following up just making it worse?
right,
Or,
right.
I've already told them so many times, I'm here if they need me.
Yeah,
At what point do I drop off? So that's always, it's happened like 3 times now. People
sure.
just and it's summertime, things get busy. I just had another client do it, and
Hmm.
maybe I'll hear from them. Maybe it'll be a different scenario, but yeah, always
Yeah,
just trying to see if there's a gentle way to pull them back and say, hey, I'm always here with
yeah.
judgment free zone. If you ever want to connect again, you've already paid for it. It's all covered. So if you ever want to chat, let me know.
Right. And in that case,
Yeah.
one thing you could do is just say, hey, thinking about you, hope you're doing well. And then it's not like it might not be creating a demand that, and I use demand coming from a neurodivergent level. But sometimes it can feel like a demand, like, oh my gosh, I should be doing this. And then
Mm,
maybe I feel guilty about it. So just saying, like, hey, I'm just touching base, and not, you don't have to respond. And I'm not saying, like, hey, if you need me, I'm here, but you can just say, I'm thinking about you.
yeah, that's good.
I'd like
Thank you.
to echo that. I had a potential client, so not even paying, but I could tell she felt so much shame about kind of what she did in the situation she was in, maybe was tricked into. So, I mean, she didn't offer to sign up for coaching, but I sent her a note a few days later, just said, I've really been thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. And it's been a few weeks, and I thought, maybe I will send her one of my tools to help her track her debt and just say, hey, I wanted to provide this resource to you. I mean, I didn't say like, hey, if you want to come to coaching with me, I mean, I'm just going to offer something for free
Right.
to help her because
That's a
I do
great,
care.
right. That's a great idea. And I think also scale it for what the situation is. So this client I had that ghosted me for 9 months, I'd been working with her for 2 years before that. We had a very strong relationship. If it's somebody that I haven't met with yet, I might, message them the next day, then in a week, and then just leave it.